A very good morning, guys. I hope I am audible to everyone. Welcome to this current affairs session. Now, guys, in this session, we will be revising all important current affairs for your upcoming mains exam. This particular month, that is in August, I have started discussing polity. We will be covering up current affairs from polity, and along with this current affairs, we will be revising some of our static portion as well. So this session happens every Saturday and Sunday. The timings of these sessions are 10 to 11:30. However, because of some technical glitch, we couldn't start this session at 10 today. So we are starting and good to go now. So let us start today's discussion. Before I start today's discussion, just a small disclaimer. So for all those who are planning to come up with a UPSC coaching, if you are planning to take up a coaching, Shriram IAS has launched a comprehensive UPSC batch for all of you. This batch includes your preparation for prelims, mains, as well as interview. Along with the same subscription, you will get optional, essay, everything. So you just need to subscribe to this code and you will get a flat 25% off. So guys, this series is a continuation of what we have discussed last week. I have started with fundamental rights. I have explained a little about preamble, why in what cases preamble was in news. I have covered that in the last week's session. In this session particularly, we will be continuing with fundamental rights. So before I start, I request everyone to hit a like to this video. In the last class, guys, we have discussed till Article 15. Okay, we have discussed Article 15. Now, in Article 15, we have seen the state shall not discriminate on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, etc. Article 15 again is a very important article because it prevents any kind of discrimination among the citizens. However, there is one exception to this. The state can make special provisions for women, children, people belonging from SC and ST community, and socially and other educationally backward classes. Very recently, economic classification for reservation has also been added in the current reservation scheme, where the person belonging from EWS category will be entitled to 10% reservation. So all these things we have discussed last week. So in today's session, we are starting with the next article, which is under right to equal opportunity or right to equality of opportunity in public employment. So according to Article 16, the state cannot discriminate in giving public employment to any citizen. The state cannot discriminate in giving public employment to any citizen on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, descent, place of birth, or residence. That means there can be no discrimination in government jobs. Now guys, this topic, reservation, is such a big topic that we can talk on these lines throughout this session. However, the objective of this session is to give you some important insight that you can use in your exam. You should know that some examples, some important case related to this particular article and this particular reservation policy. So, just like Article 15, even Article 16 has some exceptions. What are those exceptions? Parliament can prescribe residence as a condition in employment, like the cadre, that you will get after getting selected to your IAS, IPS, and any other posting that you opt for. So, Parliament by law can make residence as a condition in employment, and that is why you are allotted with cadres. Then, reservation for backward class who is not adequately represented in the state services. That means the state can make special provisions for women, for any socially and educationally backward classes, or even economic backward classes. And with this, you have the reservations in job for SCs, for STs, for OBCs, and for EWS. This is why, like, on one end, Article 16 says that there can be no discrimination. Then on the same other end, you will say that why there is reservation for SC, ST, OBC, and EWS. Basically, it is because it is rather making the society more equitable or spreading more equity among the different social groups. And that is why reservation is brought in. Then, certain religious and denominational institutions may require the members to belong to a particular religion and denomination. That means, for example, this exception comes from a different fundamental right, which is right to practice religion under 25 to 28. These are some upcoming articles. I will discuss that in detail. So some recent developments or some recent cases that you can use in your exam. Very recently, the issue around demand for local reservation in private jobs. Especially, this demand was rising in Gurugram. Okay, in Haryana. Haryana was thinking of bringing up a policy for keeping a reservation for the locals. So Supreme Court is setting aside the order which stayed the operation of Haryana State Employment Local Candidates Act of 2020, because this was against the present set reservation as per the constitution. So in the constitution, there can be no ground to keep reservation for the locals. So it is a straightaway violation of Article 16, and that is why Supreme Court has declared this act of Haryana government as void. So you can use this discussion in your upcoming mains exam. If there is a question on employment, if there is a question on the local reservation policy. Then the creamy layer criteria. The creamy layer criteria for SC and ST in promotions, which was a result of review of the Jarnail Singh case. Then reservation in promotion, not a fundamental right. This has been very recently declared by the Supreme Court. That means you can avail reservation only up till the selection in the public employment, but not in the promotion. And then the reservation based on the place of birth, which is very recently enacted in Madhya Pradesh. So you can use these recent cases from current affairs. The next article is abolition of untouchability. So the Constitution of India give you the right of equity in all forms, or it tries to maintain that equity in every form among all its citizens. So with this, untouchability or any kind of discrimination is banned under Article 17. But the problem is the untouchability is not clearly defined in our constitution. The problem is that the untouchability is not clearly defined in our constitution. However, the definition of untouchability is given under Protection of Civil Rights Act of 1955. This act explicitly explained that what will be the different kind of untouchability, and if someone practice this kind of untouchability, what kind of punishment that person is exposed to. Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocity Act of 1989. Its main objective is to prevention of atrocities on SCs and STs by increasing surveillance. So this act, SC/ST Act, Prevention of Atrocity Act, give a whole set of a bandwidth protection to the community belonging to SC or ST. So you must have seen these acts in news. Any kind of discrimination faced by a person from SC and ST, generally the FIR is filed under this act only. And this act derives its power from Article 17 of the Constitution. So some recent cases associated with this that you can mention in your answers: the Subhash Kashinath Mahajan case and its amendment through SC/ST Prevention of Atrocity Amendment Act in 2018, then Prithvi Raj Chauhan case of 2020, and then Maharashtra law against social boycott is also part of Article 17's discussion. Moving on, next article, Article 18, it was not in news anymore. However, because we are discussing all the fundamental rights, so I will have a very quick discussion on Article 18 as well. So what is Article 18, guys? Article 18 basically deals with abolition of titles. So in India, like for example, using titles such as Rai Bahadur, Raj Bahadur, or any kind of a name that keeps you above the others is banned, is not allowed as per the Article 18 of Indian Constitution. Abolition of title. However, the only exception to taking the titles are the military and academic distinctions. Military ranks like colonel, lieutenant colonel, all these ranks associated with the person, you can use them as a title. Then academic distinctions like doctor, like advocate, all these things you can add as a part of the academic distinctions. These are allowed. Then what kind of titles which are banned or which are abolished under Article 18? They are the hereditary titles which comes from the nobility conferred by the colonial states. Like for example, Zamindar, Chaudhary. Now you will even find these kind of titles are used even today. These are not their complete name. Rather, they are a distinction or the work that they are doing, which is conferred to them or to their ancestors long time ago. Like Zamindar, Nambardar, all these type of names are not allowed as per the law. So very recently, in this Balaji Raghavan case, 1994, in this case, Bharat Ratna and Padma awards are allowed to be used as title. Okay, like if somebody will call Bharat Ratna Shri Sachin Tendulkar, so this is allowed as per the Constitution. Then the next article, which is again a very prominent article which remains in news every time, is Article 19. Article 19, subclause 1 of Indian Constitution outline 6 freedoms. There are sixth freedom conferred by this article. The rights under Article 19(1) are protected against the state action that are available to the citizens, shareholders of the company, but not to foreigners or legal persons such as companies or corporation. That means it is only enjoyed by the citizens of India. It is only enjoyed by citizens of India. So what kind of different type of rights which are given under Article Clause 1? First, freedom of speech and expression. That means a person can articulate its own opinion, ideas, without any fear of retaliation, censorship, legal action. Under the same freedom of speech and expression, the fundamental right says that this article gives you right to remain silent. You can keep mum. So for example, if you want, like, have you seen those protests where nobody will speak anything? A mute or a mum kind of a protest. So this kind of a protest comes from Article 19. The next is right to assemble peacefully but without arms. This is again a constitutional right which justify any kind of protest against the state or against the government, where the people can come together, collectively express, promote, pursue, defend common interests. However, without arms. You can, meet at one common place. You can protest against the government. You can protest against any atrocities related to you. However, that should be in a peaceful manner. The next is right to form association or unions. So under this article, you have right to join others to collectively express, promote, pursue, and defend common interest, like forming cooperative societies. For example, if you know Amul, like farmer union, all these type of unions, all these type of associations are allowed as a fundamental right under Constitution 19, subclause 1, subclause C, that is 19(1)(c). Then further, Article 19 further gives the next freedom, right to move freely throughout the territory of India. That means you can enter in any part of the territory. You have a restriction-free movement allowed for general public as well as any individual, or even if the person belongs to any kind of discriminated social economic group. So right to move freely throughout the territory of India. Then right to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India. That means you have this right to build your home in any part. Like, all these rights, guys, are not absolute. There are certain restrictions. So I am coming to those restrictions. However, you understand the basic crux. Then guys, right to practice any profession or to carry out any occupation, trade or business. This is another freedom that is given, conferred under Article 19. Now guys, all these freedoms comes with certain exceptions, which are mentioned under Article 19(2). So 19(1) will give you freedoms. 19(2) will give the exceptions or the conditions to enjoy these freedom. What are these conditions? So the conditions are: the state can impose reasonable restrictions on the rights based on the grounds mentioned in the article. That means whatever the state may feel, they can impose certain restrictions on the enjoyment of these rights. For example, freedom of speech and expression. Under freedom of speech and expression, guys, you can express yourself in any means. You can express yourself, you can say whatever comes to your mind. However, you cannot abuse someone, you cannot defame someone. If you do, then there are certain legal protection to the other individuals, and you will have to go through those cases. So the exception is that you can speak whatever you want, but it should not be demeaning, it should not be against the state, or it should not be a kind of expression that is creating mutiny. Okay, so one is this. One more thing, guys, do you know this, that when you join forces, especially the armed forces or even Indian police services, when you will join IPS as an IPS officer, Article 19 will be taken from you. A very good morning, Priyanka and Ravi. So guys, Article 19 will be taken from you. Like, for example, you cannot say that I have the freedom of speech and expression, so I will share whatever plans my armed forces have prepared to counter terrorists. I can share it in open domain. It cannot be done because under Article 19, these rights have been taken from you. All right. Then right to assemble peacefully without arms. That means you can protest. However, the protest should be in a very calm and composed manner. You cannot carry out those stones. You cannot pelt stones. You cannot come with sticks and all these things. Then right to form associations. Like, do you think that IPS can form associations? They can form unions. However, one recent judgment has allowed even IPS to form or kept this as association. So you will see IAS association, IPS association. It is again coming with Article 19(1) subclause C. Then you have right to move freely throughout the territory of India. That doesn't mean that you will enter Rashtrapati Bhavan, that I want to enter the president's bed, I will go there and I will sleep there, or I will enjoy the dining in the president's dining table. There are certain restrictions which state can impose on the basis of protecting the integrity and sovereignty of the country. Then right to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India. No, it is again not absolute. What are the certain restrictions here? The restrictions are in the form of, like, when you go in northeastern states, there is something known as ILP, inner line permit. Inner line permit. So that means you can only enter those states if you have this permit. Without this permit, you are not allowed. You cannot settle in anywhere with certain conditions. Like, only limited areas are like this. Like, you cannot go in the restricted forest. You cannot take away and build your home in a forest which is occupied by a scheduled tribe. So these are the kind of different protection which is given by our constitution with certain conditions. Then right to practice any profession or any occupation. Do you think that you can sell drugs or weapons openly? Not allowed. You are allowed to practice any profession, carry out any occupation, trade, business with respect to certain conditions. And these conditions are set by the government. So there are some landmark judgments which support Article 19. For example, the Shreya Singhal case of 2015, a very important case. In this, Section 66A of Information Technology Act, which imposes punishment for sending grossly offensive and menacing information using computer resource or any kind of communication device, is illegal. A person can be tried under this Section 66A. However, in Shreya Singhal case, the Supreme Court has struck down this section, establishing its ruling as a pivotal moment for online free speech in India. That means with this, even internet is part of, it was declared, there was one comment that even internet is a part of, it is an essential part of free speech, that too online. And a very recent judgment from various high courts, particularly Madras High Court, has given that internet is part of right to life. We will elaborate this in next article, that means in article 21. Another important case is Kedarnath Singh case of 1962. Supreme Court upheld the constitutional validity of the sedition law, stating that the criticism of the government cannot be considered as sedition unless it indicates or calls for violence. Again, this is a very important case. Like if anybody is complaining about the state, you have seen that at many occasions the state will charge that individual under 124A, that is sedition. The person will be charged under the Sedition Act. Like now you all know that there is a good news coming from Parliament that even we have reformed all of our criminal laws. Like we have reformed our IPC, CRPC and Evidence Act. So that means, and even the government is planning to repeal this sedition section, and then obviously they won't, there will be certain provisions, they will amend it, they will discuss this, they will scrutinize it, and then they will come out with some similar kind of provisions which are again in similar to what sedition is. All right, but for now, in this Kedarnath Singh case, you can criticize the government, but that criticism cannot create any kind of unrest or it cannot trigger any kind of violence. Moving ahead, Article 20. Article 20 deals with protection in respect of conviction for offences. That means it enshrines the principle of legality and double jeopardy and self-incrimination that serves as a robust defense against the arbitrary punishment. Like, what do you mean by this? Let us understand with some examples. No ex post facto law. That means no person shall be convicted for any offense except for the violation of a law in force at the time of the commission of the act. That means if a person has committed an act, only in that case, the violation of the act, a person can be arrested. Without any such act committed, and then you are arresting the person, that arrest will be declared as void. Next, then a person who is subjected to a penalty greater than the prescribed in law in force at that time of the commission of the act is again considered as the violation of Article 20. For example, if a person was jailed for 10 years, but that person, the same person, he has spent 10 years in jail, if the jail authorities does not release him, it is the violation of Article 20 of that person. So, a person is subjected to a penalty greater than the prescribed by the law in force at the time of the commission of the act. Then, no double jeopardy. That means you cannot punish a person more than once. For example, there is a person, Mr. X. Mr. X has committed a offense. Mr. X has committed a offense and he has gone through the punishment related to that offense. For example, the person was a thief and he has stole something, and then that person has gone in imprisonment and he has spent 5 years in prison. Now, do you think that the same person can be caught the next time and he will be charged under the law for the same act that he has done some time ago? Like, can a policeman come कि भाई तूने तो 4 साल पहले चोरी करी थी, चल जेल में? So can this be done? Answer is no. You can only punish one individual one time for that offense. The next is no self-incrimination. That means if somebody is accused, like this is something which is violated almost every time in police stations, guys. A person who is accused, generally a policeman will force him to write a application that he has done this crime and will take a signature of that crime. So as per the law, no person can be compelled to witness against himself. That means if a person says that I have done this, you cannot straight away believe that and you cannot present that in the court of law. So the Silvi versus State of Karnataka case in 2010, where the Supreme Court has restricted the use of narco analysis and brain mapping. This is a very important judgment. So the narco analysis and brain mapping and all these kind of chemical type of test, where all these chemicals are used, sedation is used on the convicts. Basically, this is a violation of right to self-incrimination under Article 20. So Supreme Court has banned all these tests. Again, there was one more important case, D.K. Basu versus State of West Bengal, where the Supreme Court has clearly defined that polygraph tests, narco tests are considered as inhumane and degrading treatment. Under this test, Supreme Court has further expanded their views that there can be no punishment that can be, or there can be no physical torture given to a convict in the police station or even outside the police station by the police. That means the police has no right to even touch you, even if you are a rapist or a murderer, if you go with the judgment given under D.K. Basu versus State of West Bengal. Again, a very important case, guys. Do remember this case. It will help you in your life. Not only for UPSC, if you are a legal practitioner, if you are a law student, again, this case will help you a lot. Then, next important article is Article 21, the protection of life and personal liberty. Again, this is an article which includes so many things which are necessary to life, like right to life and dignity, right to enjoy privacy, right to enjoy internet. All these things are part of right to life and liberty. So across different judgments, there are so many things that has become part of Article 21. So this Article 21 gives right to life and personal liberty subject to the procedure established by the law. It is a foundation for a broad range of human rights, including right to privacy, right to live with dignity. So some important cases related to Article 21. First, A.K. Gopalan case, 1950. It is interpreted procedure established by law, narrowly ruling that the protection under Article 21 is only against the arbitrary executive action, not the arbitrary legislative action. So that means it was interpreted in A.K. Gopalan case that if somebody is violating someone's Article 21, it can only be part of executive action. That means if the police is doing some atrocities only in that case violation of Article 21 will come in handy. However, if a law takes away some certain kind of life and liberty, that is allowed, because if the law is passed, it will go through the legislative scrutiny, and then it will go through even judicial scrutiny. In Menka Gandhi case, this interpretation was further elaborated. The Supreme Court widened the interpretation of procedure established by law to include protection against arbitrary legislative action, as well as, which is similar to the American concept of due process of law. Now, under Menka Gandhi case, Supreme Court has even included that violation of Article 21 also comes from legislative action as well. Like if a law tries to abridge your life and dignity, it cannot be considered as a valid law. It means that it is a violation of Article 21. Then in Puttaswamy judgment, again a very important judgment, where the Supreme Court held that right to privacy was intrinsic to the freedom of life and personal liberty. That means each individual has its fundamental right to protect its privacy. And one such important bill that has been recently passed just 2 days ago is Data Protection Bill. Data Protection Bill. Okay, so Puttaswamy judgment, on the guidelines of Puttaswamy judgment and B.N. Sri Krishna committee, this Data Protection Bill has now finally been passed. The next is the recent Swapnil Tripathi case, where right to access to justice is also part of right to life and liberty. For example, if a person is being tortured by the executive, or he is being tortured by some legislative action, right to seek legal remedy is also part of Article 21. So I hope you are understanding these recent judgments. You can use these judgments while writing your mains answer or while supporting your answers. Then guys, Article 21 also includes one important right which was very recently again enshrined in various judgments, right to be forgotten. This principle of right to be forgotten is also taken under the Data Protection Bill. Okay, Data Protection Bill. Now, what is this right to be forgotten? Like if an individual has its information which is available online, the individual enjoys a right to take all that personal information which is available freely on internet and to force these authorities to delete his or her personal information from the internet. So it includes to delink, delete, correct any kind of disclosure of personal information on the internet, which is again which has been recently included as a new concept in Indian jurisprudence. So this is a significant aspect of data protection and privacy which was emphasized by B.N. Sri Krishna committee, which I have just recently mentioned. So under this right to be forgotten, while recognizing this right, it is also crucial that it does not infringe upon the freedom of speech and expression and right to information of the other citizens. Like for example, if you are deleting any information from the internet, you can only delete any kind of information which is personal in nature. If the information which is required to be public and which is part of your other acts like right to information or right to freedom of speech and expression, आप ऐसे एक्ट को, आप ऐसे इंफॉर्मेशन को इंटरनेट से नहीं निकाल सकते. So this right to privacy versus right to be forgotten is a kind of a way balance. So you have to balance these rights so that the challenges due to the global nature of internet and different legal norms across the jurisdiction can also be, worked upon. So this is a basic debate between right to privacy as well as right to be forgotten. Again, one more concept, guys, that you can read from your basic static notes is right to die. Right to die as a part of right to freedom of life and personal liberty. Now here the discussion comes from a concept known as euthanasia. You must have done this in your static portion. Euthanasia. What is active euthanasia? What is passive euthanasia? What are the different kind of euthanasias available? In India, what kind of euthanasia is allowed? So all these things you can also read from your static portion. Okay. Then Article 21A, again a very important article. It gives or it mandates free and compulsory education to all the children from 6 to 14 years of age, which was implemented through the RTE Act of 2009. So recent National Education Policy of 2020 has also expanded this bracket for compulsory education for 3 to 18 years. Now this is as per the National Education Policy, but even today under the Constitution it is 6 to 14 years only. Constitution में 6 से 14 साल ही mentioned है, but new education policy will try to bring compulsory education to all the children belonging to the range of 3 to 18. So this will address the need for early childhood education, extending the provision of education till the higher secondary school, that is up till the 12th class. So the government will ensure that any individual or any student or any kid belonging to this range is getting free and compulsory education. Then guys, Article 22, protection against arrest and detention. Now arrest and detention, now detention can be, guys, of two types. There can be two types of detention. One, preventive detention and punitive detention. Preventive and punitive. Now what is punitive detention? Like this fundamental right gives you protection to against any kind of illegal arrest. For example, if there is a murderer, Mr. X is a murderer. Let's suppose this. Okay. Now, if Mr. X murders someone, and as per law, he will be detained in the judicial jail. That is the judicial confinement. Now, don't you think the Mr. X can approach the court that it is violation of my fundamental right, that why I am confined to jail? I have Article 19 to move freely throughout the territory of India. So answer will be no. The person cannot be allowed because he is detained as per the law. This is something which is known as punitive detention. Now there is another kind of detention which is known as the preventive detention. Now even like for example, during the removal of Article 370, all these prominent leaders of J&K were put under preventive detention. इसको बहुत commonly we call this as house arrest. You must have heard these terms, house arrest. So Article 22 deals with the provisions related to different types of arrest which is available to any individual. So under ordinary laws, what are the grounds that the police has to follow when they are, or police or any other agency who is arresting? So there is right to be informed of the grounds of arrest. So if any executive force, either police, ED, CBI, is arresting someone, they have to ensure that the arrested person is fully aware of why they are being detained. They should have the right they should also, like this, also this provision also includes being informed of the right to get bail or right to seek bail through legal remedies. Then under the same act, right to consult and be defended by a legal practitioner. So you have a fundamental right of legal representation. You have a fundamental right to access to legal advice and a legal defense. Either now, if the person is not able to afford that legal advice, the state will provide a legal advice to that individual. That means there will be a government lawyer that will be given to you. Then right to be produced before a magistrate within 24 hours. Like whenever a person is arrested, in next 24 hours, a person has to be presented before the judicial magistrate. And it is again the right of the judicial magistrate to decide that whether they want the person to be detained in a judicial custody or a police custody. Okay. So it includes judicial oversight, ensuring prompt investigation, minimizing the potential use of misuse of power. One more thing, guys, travel time is excluded from this calculation of 24 hours. Travel time. Like for example, if you talk in the lines, like if you compare this example of an arrest in Delhi and compare an example of an arrest in, let's say, a remote area of Arunachal Pradesh. A person arrested in Delhi, obviously a judicial magistrate is in a very close periphery so that the person can be easily produced in 24 hours. But what if a person is arrested from the borders of Arunachal Pradesh and the person has to be brought to a judicial magistrate in the district? In this case, there can be a possibility where the traveling time could be more than of 8 to 10 hours. Like in this case, how do you think the police will be able to present the accused before the magistrate in 24 hours? So with this limitation, generally the traveling time is excluded from the calculation of 24 hours. Right? So guys, if you are enjoying this discussion, I request if you can give a like to this video, that will be much appreciated. And you can also share this video with your friends. Then guys, right to be released after 24 hours unless authorized by the magistrate. Like this is a fundamental right. If a person is not, presented in 24 hours before a magistrate, this becomes a ground for a release of that person against the arbitrary detention. So you must have seen in old movies where the police can, caught hold the individual and can put behind the lockup for, for the timeless, without any time limit. They put that accused behind the lockup. Is it possible today? Again, answer is no. It is very difficult. However, there are many things, again, like many examples, which again happens even today. Police is doing these atrocities. They are violating the fundamental rights of the individual. Then another part of this detention under Article 22 is preventive detention. So what are preventive detention? A person who is detained or who can create any kind of a administration problem or a law and order problem, the executive have this power to detain that person beforehand so that that person cannot trigger any kind of unrest. This detention cannot exceed 3 months without any advisory report. Like once you can detain at max for 3 months. And that detention can be again extended, but only after the report submitted by the advisory board. This prevents the prolonged detention without any adequate justification. So like there will be a committee, advisory board that will be set up, and that board will decide that whether you want to continue the detention of the person or not. Next, the grounds of detention that should be communicated to the detainee. Whatever grounds on which you are detaining the person, you should ensure that there is a full transparency. A person should know that why that person is being detained. What is the dispute or the grounds for their detention? Okay, this should be again communicated to that person. The next fundamental right is right against exploitation, Article 23 and 24. We'll discuss these two. So Article 23 talks on prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor. So any kind of human trafficking, like prostitution, like child smuggling, sex trafficking, organ trafficking, forced labor, which is also known as begar or bonded labor, bandhua mazduri, bonded labor. So all these kinds of activities are prohibited under Article 23, or this you can say rather is a fundamental right to every individual. So one landmark judgment here is the PUDR versus Union of India, which reinforced the right against the forced labor, ruling that economic compulsion that leaves no choice for a person, compels them to provide labor and service, is also constitute a forced labor. That means if a person, due to some economic condition, is forced to work for some individual, is also will be clubbed under the category of the bonded labor. Then labor law issues in India, like the modification to labor law during COVID-19 have raised concerns regarding the workers' right. For example, the worker exploitation can increase due to unchecked economic power of the employers, leading to longer working hour condition and lesser pay. So these are some labor law issues that violates Article 23. Very quickly, Article 24, it prohibits any kind of child labor explicitly. Okay, so if a person, if any individual who is below the age of 14 years cannot be compelled to work in any kind of economic activity. Okay, so child labor is not allowed. Any person who is, any child who is under the age of 14 is not allowed to work at all. However, Child Labor Protection and Regulation Act of 1986, it also gives certain conditions for employing any individual from the age of 14 to 18. Like guys, when I say that what is the definition of a child, how do you define a individual as a child or as a minor? So as per the law, anyone who is below the age of 18 is considered as the minor. However, some recent amendments to Juvenile Justice Act, a person who is of 16 to 18 years of age and that person is involved in a heinous crime. Okay, if a person is involved in a heinous crime, now what do you mean by heinous crime? Two crimes are considered to be heinous: rape and murder. If an individual is involved in these two crimes, then it is considered as, or then the person will be considered as an adult if he is from the age of 16 to 18. Now, if a heinous crime committed by a 15-year-old guy, he will be treated as a juvenile and he will go as per the juvenile justice law. I hope you are understanding what I am trying to explain here. Okay, so this Child Labor Act Prohibition and Regulation also gives certain conditions that yes, like we all know, a person who is belonging to this age 14 to 18 years, at times there are people who are the only sole bread earners of their family. So in this case, if you are not allowing them to work, you are basically hampering the sustenance of such a family. So in some cases, 14 to 18 years, even children are allowed to work, but again, there are conditions like the economic activity in which these people are involved or these kids are involved should not be hazardous in nature. Like it cannot be a chemical factory, it cannot be a glass factory or furnace or kind of a cracker making factory, etc., etc. And then it is the responsibility of the employer to ensure that any child who is from 14 to 18 years, and if he or she is working, the employer will ensure that his or her education is not compromised. So the working hours will be in such a way that it will be in tandem, that it do not hamper the economic, or sorry, it do not hamper the schooling or the education of these children. Very quickly, moving on to the next set of rights, the right to freedom of religion, Article 25 and 28. So Indian Constitution recognizes religious freedom to all individual as a fundamental right. This is an important right, guys, because this freedom of religion and expression is basically embodying the principle of secularism. Like our preamble says that we are a secular country. However, this is again a very debatable concept. We all know, even in the present scenario, and the such a, we are right now running at a very fragile condition when it comes to the social condition. Like we are seeing clashes between the communities, clashes between the religion, clashes between the caste. So protecting these ideas is important because again, it is given by our constitution makers. It is believed to be a part of the essence and the spirit of our constitution. So article will study what all article we have for the protection of religion. From 25 to 28, it deals with the protection of religion. As per Article 25, it guarantees the freedom of conscience or consciousness, right to freely profess, practice, propagate your religion. That means you can adopt any religion, you can adopt those religious practices associated with that religion, and you can also spread your religion, you can propagate your religion, however, with certain restrictions. What are these restrictions? Like you cannot compromise public order, you cannot compromise morality, you cannot compromise health. For example, illegal conversions. Do you think is it allowed? Again, something which is again very debatable in the modern society. Illegal conversions, is it allowed, guys? As per law, illegal conversions are not allowed. Forceful conversions are not allowed. But again, it is done as a part of propagation of religion. One more thing, guys. The same Article 25 gives you the right to believe in no religion, to practice atheism, or you can call yourself as an atheist. So it extends the religious beliefs, doctrines, religious practices, and rituals. The state is permitted to regulate or restrict any secular activity associated with the religious practice and provide for social welfare and reform. That means state is permitted to regulate or restrict any secular activity. However, the state cannot promote any particular religious activity because this is again a violation of Article 14, right to equality. So very recently, Karnataka High Court judgment has come out that wearing hijab is not an essential religious practice as per the Islamic law. And the interpretation of this article in the contemporary times. Okay, so Now this was again very much debatable in our social fabric or in our society, that wearing hijab, because it was, according to the High Court, Karnataka High Court, it was considered that hijab is not a part of essential religious practice in Islam. That means, in other words, Islam can be practiced even without wearing Islam. This is the court's interpretation. Like many will compare this with like how Sikhs are allowed to carry out beard and wear turban, but whereas a Muslim is not allowed to carry to keep a beard. So again, there are many judgments on these lines, where again beard in Sikhism is part of their essential religious practice, whereas a beard in Islam is not considered as a part of as a practice under the Islamic law. Then Article 26, this article confers on every religious denomination the freedom to manage its own religious affair. That means any religion who is, any individual who is practicing his religion is allowed to manage its own religious affairs. It's allowed to acquire movable and immovable property and to control and administer those properties according to the law. However, there is a contrast between Article 25 and 26, that while 25 protects the individual religious right, 26 safeguards the collective religious freedom. So 25 gives you the individual religious right, 26 gives you the collective religious right. Then Article 27. Article 27 prevents any individual from compelled to pay taxes for the promotion and maintenance of a particular religion. That means if a person is deliberately, following one religion, you cannot compel him to pay certain tax on that religion. This is violation of Article 27. This provision ensures that the state, that means the government, does not favor or patronize one religion over the other. Now guys, again, all these articles are very much debatable in the public domain. Article 28. Again, Article 28 prohibits the religious instructions in educational institutions that are wholly funded by the state. For example, there is one religious institution which is getting aid or getting monetary benefits from the state. मान के चलो किसी ऐसे religious institution को सरकार से मदद मिलती है, फाइनेंशियल हेल्प मिलती है, ऐसे religious institution में religious पढ़ाई नहीं कराई जा सकती, बिकॉज फिर ये ऐसा कंसिडर करा जाएगा कि स्टेट के पैसे से रिलीजन की पढ़ाई कराई जा रही है. सो अगर कोई रिलीजियस इंस्टीट्यूशन है जिसको सरकार मदद करती है, और ऐसा होता है, द गवर्नमेंट जनरली गिव्स सर्टेन फंड्स टू एड दीज रिलीजियस इंस्टीट्यूशंस, बट इन ऑल दीज रिलीजियस इंस्टीट्यूशंस द children are taught some religious values. Along with that, the state will regulate the other educational things there. So however, this does not apply to educational institution administered by the state. Like the vice versa is, all the educational institutions which are running under the state cannot give religious instructions or religious teachings. Okay, so this is Article 28. Then Article 29 and 30, it gives you the right to culture, or to protect your cultural and educational rights. Basically, these two articles gives you right to all the minorities of the country. So Article 29 gives this right to individual as the group, allowing all citizens to protect their language, their script, their culture, and prevent them from being denied admission to the state maintained or aided institution on discriminatory grounds. That means any individual has this right to protect its language, script, and culture. So with this, you can link it this, like for example, this language issue is going on in South, like in Karnataka. So they have this right to protect their own language, their own culture, their script. However, the problem is you cannot force others to speak your language. You have this right to protect, conserve this language. Okay. However, you cannot force others to adopt your language, and that is why we are still struggling to declare one language as a national language. Like, this is a debate, right? We do not have a national language. Like, we consider Hindi as one of the important official languages, but again, Hindi is not a national language as of now. Okay, similarly, English is also not a national language which is spoken in India. So I hope you understand these provisions. Then Article 30. So just like Article 26, Article 30 gives all the minorities some freedom based on their religion and language to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. That means to protect their culture, their language, they can establish institution and they can administer those institutions. In Article 26, the same collective rights is given to the groups to form institutions to protect their religion. So just like that, even minorities have this right. So it also includes right of the minority to impart education to its children in its own language. Like the new education policy. The new education policy also supports this, guys. The promotion of vernacular language. Yes or no? The promotion of vernacular language. Then right to establish, administer educational institutions is not absolute because it comes under regulatory measures set by the government. Like if you want to declare one language as official language under the 8th schedule, it goes through a certain regulations. That means the government will certify that. Then the state shall not, in granting aid to educational institutions, can discriminate against any educational institution on the ground that it is under the management of minority, whether based on religion or language. So Article 31A deals with the fixation of the amount for acquisition of property of any educational institution established by the minority groups. So this is Article 30. Now guys, Article 32, that is the writ jurisdiction, I will cover under the topic judiciary. We will elaborate the writ jurisdiction there as a fundamental right. Moving on to the next topic, we will have a little discussion on the federal structure of the Indian Constitution. And then we will see some current affairs related to the federal structure. Like most important current affairs is cooperative federalism. And it is again a very important topic for your mains exam. There are questions where you can use the ideas of cooperative federalism in mains. So guys, this is what these sessions are meant for. Basically, it will support or it will help you to frame answers for your GS1, GS2, GS3. Like in the month of June, I have covered an international relations. You can check out the videos from the description box in the playlist. Then in the month of July, I have covered environment and ecology. And in the month of August, I am covering a complete polity. So what do you mean by the federal structure of India? So basically, what is this? What is the meaning of this word federalism? Federalism means division of power. The basic meaning of federalism is division of power. So, division of power, that means you are sharing your power across different tiers or different levels of the government. So there are different type of federalism structures which are followed across different countries. Like most of the countries, they have the two-tier system where the power is shared between the center and the state. However, there are some areas where the sharing of power is at three tiers: the center, the state, and especially a country like India, we have a very deep decentralization of power at the panchayat level. So center, state, and panchayat / urban local bodies. You can also add urban local bodies for urban areas. So federalism is basically considered as a backbone of any democracy because it governs the relationship between center and the state. So in this topic, we will explore all the issues and the challenges that India's federal structure it goes through. We will do a deep examination of Indian federalism, and we will also see that what are the challenges that Indian federalism face. Now, first of all, if we understand the Indian federalism, it is a system where you have division of power. You have a central authority, and then the power is divided at the various level. So Indian federalism is again a little different from the other kind of federalism because despite that we have three tiers, okay, we have divided our power among the center, state, and panchayat. But the system of Indian federalism is way different from the federalism of any other country, like for example, America. For example, American federalism is a result, like America as a country has formed after an agreement among different states. That means different states have joined together to form one country, which is known as the United States of America. However, in India, do you think that all the states have come together to form India? Answer is no. It is the India that has divided into different states, and that is why India is known as Union of States. So India has this Indian state does not have this power to get separated and form their own country. Like Uttar Pradesh cannot become a separate country. Okay, like right now the Punjab, there is a Khalistani movement going on in Punjab. Do you think that declaring Punjab as Khalistan will, will make that state as a separate country? Answer is no, because the jurisdiction lies with center. However, if you compare this with America, in America, each state even today has a power to get separate from the United States of America. Then what are the features of Indian federalism? First, we have some federal characteristics like which make some provisions in the constitution that makes Indian political system as federal. However, the setup that we have in India is considered to be a quasi-federal setup. That means, though we are a federal country, we have divided the powers among the state, but there are some occasions where all the power can become centralized. That means center can take the powers which are even enshrined under the state list. So India is a kind of a federal system where it is believed to be a quasi-federal in nature. All right. So, what are the areas which have the federal characteristics in our constitution? For example, division of power between center and state as per the 7th schedule. Then we have a written constitution. That means the power which is conferred on the state cannot be taken just like that. Then supremacy of the constitution. Then rigidity of the constitution. That means the constitution is very rigid. You cannot amend it so easily. And then independent judiciary. Bicameralism is one more federal feature. What is bicameralism? That means having two houses. So in Lok Sabha, we have representation of the people. In Rajya Sabha, we have representation of all these states. So that is why bicameralism supports the idea of federalism. And then we have the electoral federalism, where we have elections happening in the center and then elections happening in the state. So these are the features which have the federal characteristic. What are the non-federal characteristics that we have? So despite federal structure, India has some unitary features, like we have a single constitution for union and states. This makes it a quasi-federal. Then single citizenship. You cannot say that I am a citizen of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Karnataka, Arunachal Pradesh. No, you are the resident of Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka. Even the government of Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, they cannot give you citizenship certificate. They will give you the residential certificates, which are commonly known as the domicile certificate. Then we have an integrated judiciary, like we have lower courts, then high courts, and then Supreme Court at the top. Similarly, we have a strong center. That means there are provisions where center will have more powers than in comparison with the states. Like for example, emergency situation. In emergency situation, center will acquire all the important powers. Like there is a conflict between a state subject and a center subject. So central subject will always prevail. So these are some examples where Indian constitution is more quasi-federal in nature, or it is more inclined towards a centralized fiscal architecture. Okay, so this makes Indian constitution more federal. Then what are the features of towards the strong center? First, we have divided what all subjects that each level or each level of government can make. Like for example, as per the 7th schedule, we have union list, which include all these subjects which are important for national importance, like defense, atomic energy, and all these, they can make laws. State list, it includes state subject which are of local and regional importance for that particular state, so they can make laws on the state subjects like education, water, land, police. Then there are certain subjects like concurrent list, where both center and state can together make some laws. So these are known as the concurrent list. So guys, we will continue this discussion next week. For now, I am ending today's discussion, but before we end, I would like to give you some information that if you are thinking of subscribing to a UPSC preparation, because at Unacademy, we have come out with a combined plan for your prelims, for your mains, as well as for the interview, a complete foundation course. You can join us at Shriram with this amount. If you apply this code, your amount will be deducted from 54,999 to 26,249. So this subscription amount will include your optionals, it will include essays, it will include answer writing, mentorship, everything will be clubbed here at Unacademy. So this session, guys, I will continue next week, where I will take up this federalism as a topic, and from there we will build on some current related aspects like cooperative federalism. Okay, so this is it for today's session, guys. I'll see you in the next session next week. Till then, Jai Hind to